What's up, everyone? Welcome back. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the five ascensions that just were revealed in the live stream the other day, and I was going to just kind of like glance over everything and look at it, give my idea, like just take a little bit of a time to like kind of figure out what I like and what I don't like, and what seems to have a lot of potential, and yeah, just kind of like go over it, right? Let's start out with the Smith of Kitava, which is the Warrior Ascent, the third Warrior Ascent, and I think we should kind of start with the Smith Master work here, which is basically a free point you get to take, and then afterwards you get to pick 2 points down here, and then you could technically say, or you could technically pick 8 down here once you ascend the last time, but every ascend gives you 2 points, and you could choose to put them in here if you want to. Um, it seems like a very optimal choice in both the early game, but it has some potential, I would say, for end game too. Um, One of the things that are really, really nice here, in my opinion at least, is granting the fire resistance in combination with the others up here, which basically makes your maximum fire resistance also grant maximum lightning and cold resist, and modifiers to fire resist grants cold and lightning at 50% of their value. So that is kind of something that we are familiar with from Path of Exile 1. It was um, the chieftain that had that exact same type of deal. My or Righteous Fire chieftain that I have on PoE 1 has 90 to all resistance. It's super potent, it's super powerful, it's a very good defensive build, and what you basically have to focus on afterwards is the offensive part of the build, which is, it frees up a lot of things, and it lets you not be nearly as focused on specific mods on your gear. Like, you can have less mods on your gear because you're gaining a lot of, you could say, like, chosen mods here that are basically allowing you to customize your own armor. And there's another thing about it that I really like. It's, so what happens here is you can't use a magic, rare, or unique armor. It has to be a white or a normal body armor type. But what this does is it kind of allows you to use an evasion or energy shield base to not get the penalty to movement speed from using an armor based. So I kind of like that. It kind of does make a little bit of sense to go a different direction here and just use something that doesn't penalize you. So I kind of like that. It is one of those things that just seems really good, especially early on, I would say, because you're basically getting 90 fire, or like 90 all resistance for a couple of points here. And on top of that, there are other notes that are kind of interesting. So we do have the increased life, that's decent, but what I'm really looking at here is the 20% increased strength. Since we have notes on the tree already that kind of combines a little bit with this, I'll pull out the tree here. It's this one. So this one basically gives you +2 to maximum fire res per uncapped, per 40 uncapped fire res, right? So if you just mat stacking fire res, you can definitely get to 90% all resistance, and on top of that, with 20% extra strength, you're gaining damage per 15 strength here, and if you have 500 strength and you're then getting a 20% boost to that, that's not only, that's a boost to your life, but also a boost to your damage. So this does, like, in when they presented it, I looked at it and I was kind of like, nah, this is like not really that nice. Like, I'm not super in love with it. After having sat down and really gone over everything, I'm starting to like it a lot more, and it does have a lot of potential. Um, Another thing is the body armor grants 25% physical damage from hits taken as fire damage, and if you have 90% fire rest, then you're negating a lot of damage. So this is basically what you get off of the unique armor called Cloak of Flame, I believe it's called, and that armor in itself is pretty decent, but I would say there the armor is probably a little bit better than this specific node, but there's definitely an argument to be made for using a couple of these, right? Like there's some of these things that are kind of potent in my opinion, and depending on what kind of build you're like running with, there's reasons to take a couple of things here. Um, you have the maximum fire resistance here. You have, well, this is not necessarily as useful. If you can stack enough fire res, you can gain the maximum fire res off of your tree, right? I guess I just showed from that node. And I do think that this whole idea has some potential, and it has I do like it a lot more now than I did the day they've revealed it. So I do think that this has a lot of potential, especially for speedrunning early game, getting into maps, until you basically, this has so much use up until the point where your gear is going to carry all of the things, right? So I really like this ascent actually. I wasn't the biggest fan of warriors. This does make me a little bit more interested. Personally, my favorite warrior build at the moment would be the Shout or Warcry warrior build from that Steel Mage put out. That I have that myself. It works fairly well. It is a bit slow, but it does have decent damage, and it does do some, or it does have some survivability. It's not the best, honestly. Like there's so many other builds that outperforms it, but for a warrior, it's pretty decent. I kind of like it, and it's one of those builds that can be used both on PlayStation or like on console, controller, and keyboard and mouse. Whereas some of the other warrior builds is actually not great on a controller because you have no real control over where you're putting down your attack. So, for instance, using your big hammer on a controller, you're kind of left to luck on where it actually drops the hammer. Whereas with the mouse, you can place the hammer wherever the mouse cursor is at, right? So, yeah, I think there's a lot of potential here. There's a lot of these nodes that has stuff that could potentially be really good, both early, but it's like especially early, sorry, and then also in endgame, technically. Next up, we'll look over this one. It's called Living Weapon. Basically, we know this from Path of Exile 1 as well. It's kind of like animated weapons, but now instead of it being a skill gem, it's a ascent, so it's bound to the warrior. It's not something you can use on any build. So this opens up the warrior to become a semi-minion build potentially. It's still a little bit unclear how good this actually is. It's something we'll have to kind of test out and play around with to figure out how good it actually is. It does, as I said, it does provide the option to maybe go go into a minion build with it, and you could technically have some specters that would buff this even more, and then have it really comes down to how well you can accumulate spirit, in my opinion. Depending on how easy it is to accumulate a lot of spirit on this, that will in turn show if it's worth doing a minion build or if you just want to go for something different. Now, against the anvil, this is one thing that I was not super impressed with, and after having watched the reveal a couple of times, it kind of became clear to me that this is a charge based it's based on charges, and you're using up your charges, so it seems like you will have to use this quite often in order to buff your power, and for that reason, I'm not sure I like it too much. So a good comparison here, in my opinion, would be the monk. The monk has a skill called charge staff. Charge staff uses power charges, and the way that functions is, for my, like personally for my monk, I have added a lot of duration to skill duration, so that in turns lets me be or have the charge staff up way longer. So my charge staff right at this moment, if I remember correctly, off of 3 charges, it's 42 seconds, right? So you have 42 seconds until you have to press your charge staff again. But not only that, where you had to stop, pull out an anvil, put your weapon on the anvil, start hammering on the anvil. That is a lot of time spent to do it, whereas with the monk, it's a press of a button and it instantaneously activates. It's not something he has to stand there and rub the fucking quarterstaff or something. It's just instantaneously. So I don't know if I will ever be using this. I'll probably try it out just to see how it works, but I don't think it's something that will be that useful unless the damage output you get from doing it is so high that it's actually worth doing, right? Like that would be the only counter argument I can see to using this. If the damage becomes high enough, then you could technically use it for bossing or stuff like that, and it would be very, very nice. But if it has a cooldown, if it's like, you know what I mean, like if it's something you have to do every 20 seconds or every third attack or fourth attack, it's too much. When you're blasting in maps, you want to just blast the map. You don't want to be running, stopping, running, stopping, running, stopping, running, stopping constantly to power up your weapon. That just doesn't seem like something I personally would use. And for the heat of the forge, I don't feel like we saw a whole lot on this one. I'm not entirely sure what this entails and how potent it is. And this is again something we kind of have to um, test out to see if it's actually good or not. At this very moment in time, I'm not super convinced about the heat of the forge and the against the anvil. Both of those kind of seem a little meh to me. But of course, I'm no expert on warrior. This is where I'm gonna be listening to what Karn says once this comes out, if it's potent or not. But for me, my personal opinion, just looking it over, it did not like spring out and say, "Wow, this is great." You know what I mean? It just seems kind of mid. You know what I mean? Or yeah, it's basically how I view it. And if we're looking at the smaller notes here, there's some fire damage, some fire resistance, some extra melee damage, a little bit of minion damage. Nothing crazy here, fairly simple and easy to understand, right? We did kind of like touch on these because I feel like these two, Forged and Flame and Cold Stalker, they go perfectly with the fire resistance over here. It's just it's basically a match made in heaven, and it reminds me a lot of the chieftain that I have on PoE 1. So that's pretty much it for this Ascension. I do think this has a lot of potential. It could technically be one of the stronger ones, in my opinion, especially because now you don't need to use an armor-based armor. You could technically go with an ES base or an evasion base or something like that, and you could technically pull a lot of spirit out of that armor in itself. If you thinking about it, you could have a white armor, but it has an implicit on it that gives spirit, right? So you could technically get more spirit from that and from the no, you can't, because it has to be a normal armor, right? But you could still get the spirit or a movement speed, or there's a couple other implicits you can get off of white armor. So even though it's a white armor, you could technically still have one what do you call them, implicit on it. That could be chaos resistance. It could be there's a couple life regen. There's like a bunch of them that could be technically nice. But yeah, that's about it for this. I don't wanna stick with this for too long. So next up we have the mercenary class. It is called the tactician, and this also has some things in here that I find interesting. And then a lot of things that I'm not super into, if I'm being honest. Some stuff could technically be really good, but it comes down to testing it out and trying it out to really figure out how well it functions or with other things, right? If we look at this one up here, it's called Right Where We Want Them, and it's pinned enemies cannot perform an action. Now, this one is one of those that technically has a lot of potential. It looks somewhat potent. It could be really good, both in solo and in group play, but I think especially in group play, this could be really good. But it's something that we'll have to test it out and figure out how well it performs, how easy it is to activate basically, and how much like damage or how much you have to hit an enemy before it actually activates that on the enemy, and for like how long it actually lasts on them, because it's not super clear at the moment. And if we look at this one right here, it's the small note beforehand. It says you can place multiple banners. Oh, sorry, not the small one, the one next to it, sorry. It's called Whoever Pays Best. You can place multiple banners. This also has a lot of potential to become really, really strong, especially I would say in group play. This could be very, very nice. So those two in combination with each other, I could see being really, really nice on a group play situation. But it is a little bit unclear again at this very moment how well these would perform. I'm not entirely sure here if it's something I would be wanting to do. I'm definitely gonna level one and test it out and figure out what it does. Next up we have Watch How I Do It. It's fairly basic, I would say. It's not super convoluted. Allies in your presence gain attack damage equal to 25% of your main hand weapon. I'm guessing that what this means is it'll just add the attack damage. It's not like you lose your attack. Like if your attack damage is higher than mine, I don't think you lose it. I just think it adds extra on top of what you already have. And since they are changing crossbows to be a two-handed weapon now, or count as a two-handed weapon in terms of its damage, there is potential for this to be really, really good. But I do somewhat think that you want to be running with like a mace or a quarterstave or something like that with like a super high base damage, like as high as you can get it, right? And that way it would potentially be really, really good. Again, it's something we really have to play around with and test first before you can really say how well this is going to be working out. Next up we have a solid plan. This one is fairly simple, pretty straightforward. Persistent buffs have 50% less reservation, so technically this could be really, really good. It's one of those things again where maybe not. It's comes down to the utilization of how well it performs and what you want to use it with in order for it to like make it feel really good. It's hard to say right now. It's not like some of the others where you just look at it and you can like kind of tell, okay, this is gonna be quite potent, right? Like some things just seem like they will be really, really fucking good. Technically, it could be really good if you're using spirit for minions and stuff like that, or if you want to have a lot of like auras on, basically. It could be really good. I'm not really sure about this one. It has potential. It's something you'll have to play around with first to figure out if it's actually as good as it seems. But we'll have to see when it comes out. Next up, we have the suppressing fire, and this one is it's okay, I guess. Like projectile damage builds pin. So if you basically you're grabbing this one to get to this one, right? And depending on how easy it is to build up the pin, that really will show how easy or how potent this actually is. If you can build up pin real easy, then this would be probably a really good choice. If it's something that takes way too much or way too many hits to build up, then I don't see a use for it, or I don't see it being that useful. And next up would be cannons ready. And for cannons ready, yeah, this is. I don't know if this can compete with like the Warbringer warrior class in terms of, or the other one. What was the other one called? It was called the Titan. I don't know if this can compete with the Titan or the Warbringer. I'm not entirely sure. This could be really nice. This could be kind of useless. It's one of those things we will just have to try it out and figure out if there's any type of use for it. And I do think that the ballistas counts as a totem. If I'm pretty sure that counts as a totem. So technically there could be some idea with it, but I'm not sure about this one either. I'm really up in the air on these specific types there. Not to say that there's anything wrong with totems or anything. I just don't know if the class itself is actually worth going for a totem build, or if it would be better to go for a warrior or something like that. Next up, we have Unleash Hell, supporting fire. So this is the one that's showing up here. And this one does seem, in my opinion, fairly good, especially for your Arcanist's minions or for the snipers. Both of those kind of benefit from accuracy and damage, right? So that could technically be really, really good. Again, it's a little bit up in the air. It's one of those things we kind of have to try them out. You know what I mean? Like we have to test: is this actually as good as it seems? Because it seems kind of potent. It seems like it could be really, really good. Again, it comes down to testing it out and trying it out and figuring out if it's actually as good as it seems. Because it, as I said, it does seem like this could be really nice with a minion setup. In my opinion, of course, it's this is all opinion based. It's just me giving my ideas or like thinking about it and looking into it and figuring out what I like and what I don't like. Next up would be polystat gear. Now for polystat gear, this is basically a massive defensive node, right? Like one of my biggest issues at this current moment is the stuns. I think or feel the stuns are a little bit heavy-handed in the game. There's sometimes you just get hit once by an enemy and it stops you in your track and you get swarmed immediately and you can't do anything. You just instantly die. And that is somewhat annoying because it comes out of nowhere all of a sudden. You get stunned and you get stun locked and then you're just dead. I guess that's simply how easy it is. And the alignment threshold is also kind of nice, especially because they were talking about in the Q&A that they would make that a little bit more. The alignments would become a little bit more powerful, so you would get hit with them more, and for that reason I could see some potential in using this. If you need safety, it does provide some alleviation of being frozen, stunned, and all these things, right? And next up would be the stay light, use cover. This sounds somewhat good. This is kind of another one of those that it comes, like, I'm not entirely sure how useful it actually will be. Is this gonna be as good as it seems? It does seem kind of good. Again, a very defensive note, and it's either gonna be like really good, or it's gonna be like a super troll type, aka like a noob trap, right? Like that it's somewhat up in the air with this one. I don't know if the maximum physical damage reduction is kind of worth it. If it is, this could be really, really good. If it's not, then, well, there would be other notes on the tree here that I would prefer to take over that. But yeah, that's about it. We can go over the small notes and look. We have some armor evasion. We have some totem damage. We have some minion damage. We have increased spirit. And we have some increased presence area. This could be kind of nice. And we have the banners. Again, this could be kind of nice, all dependent upon how well it performs with other things. All right, and now we're gonna look at something that I personally think is gonna be very strong. Like, this seems like immediately this springs out to me like one of the absolute stronger classes in terms of the potency and some of these things. There are some of these things, but it all, again, depending on how they're gonna treat chaos damage, this could be really, really, really fucking good. This could be crazy, honestly. Rupture the Soul with the cursed enemies killed by you or your allies in your presence have a 33% chance to explode, dealing a quarter of their maximum life as chaos damage. This is also something we kind of know from Path of Exile 1 with the Chieftain having a node that explodes enemies, dealing X amount of their life as fire damage. And it has, since I played around with that a lot, it was really, really good on the Righteous Fire Chieftain. Is it gonna be equally as good here? I really hope so, because this seemed like it has potential to be really, really freaking strong. And I could see this being one of those that get nerfed a little bit, maybe, because it might be a little bit too strong in comparison to some of the other classes. And yeah, there's definitely a lot that could go right with this class. Now the next one would be Necromantic Conduit. You and your allies have Unholy Might. While you're not on low mana, lose 5% of mana per second. Now, depending on how well you can negate the mana loss, this could be so good for a minion build. Really, really good, honestly. I could see what are they called? Frost mages for this, for instance. That would be really good. That could be really intensive. And there's also a couple of other ideas I have with this that could be really, really good. It again comes down to how strong the chaos damage is gonna be. But it seems like it has a lot of potential. Now, Unholy Might is 30% 30% of damage as extra chaos damage. So if your damage is high, this is just another 30% on top of your top damage as chaos damage, right? Like, that is kind of crazy. And we can basically buff that. We'll see that a little bit, like when we go down a little bit, we'll see that. Next up, we have Eldritch Empowerment. This one I'm not so sure about. I don't know. I'm just not sure about this one. This could be useful. I'm not sure right now. I might realize some potential use for it down the line when I played around with it, but as of right now when I'm looking at it, it doesn't necessarily seem super interesting to me. Not in comparison to Rupture Your Soul and Necromantic Conduit. Those seem super strong. Now, next up, we would be Dominion over Flesh. This is very simple. It's letting you apply another curse. And you can curse hexproof enemies. That is just nice, in my opinion. That is really, really nice. Even if you're just a support character and you're the curse bot, this could be really good. And it could kind of save you a ring slot or save you some point on the tree that you don't have to use to apply an additional curse. You don't have to get the ring that allows you to do that, the door grace, whatever it's called, I can't remember. And you don't have to necessarily take the note on the tree that lets you apply another curse. So this has some real big potential, in my opinion. Could be used with Hex Blast as well if you want to make some type of attack build. So I definitely think that this could be really good, and it has piqued my interest quite a bit. I do think this has a lot of potential. Next up is a Blackened Heart. This is pretty simple. And that's what I was talking about before with the Unholy Might from Necromantic Conduit. This one basically just allows you to buff your Unholy Might to let it basically get even more damage out of it. And it's 4% increased magnitude of Unholy Might. You buffs you grant per 100 mana, which is kind of like the Archmage. I think that's what it's called. So this does have some potential to really be broken, in my opinion. If you combine this with the right setup, this could be really, really, really good. Like, actually really fucking good, right? Next up, we have the Crystalline. I'm not entirely sure how to say the last part here, so I'm not going to slaughter that. Which this is 100% increased effect of Socketed Jewel. So if you have a good enough jewel and you put it in here, I could see some really, really good shit with this. And on top of that, if you're using it in combination with being CI, which means that you're only using Energy Shield, then you're basically negating the downside, right? Like the increased 50% mana cost if you have no Energy Shield. Well, if you're CI and you have no Energy Shield, that means you're dead. So for that reason, this could be really, really fucking good, in my opinion, especially in combination with CI. It could just be crazy. Honestly, this could be really crazy. And so this is again something we'll have to kind of play around with it to figure out how good it is. But I see this as a potential for either a defensive setup or an offensive setup, depending on which jewel you kind of choose here. You could technically be running around with like 1 or 2 or 3 jewels in your inventory that you could swap out if you need a different setup, if you need more defensive, or if you need more offensive, or whatever you kind of need, right? Like, that is kind of nice, I think. I think that has potential to be really good, even though you would have to swap out jewels maybe. It still seems like it's really nice. Next up we have the Eternal Life, and for this one I simply have no clue, honestly. Your life cannot charge while you have Energy Shield. I don't really know what this would be used for. I'm not entirely sure if there's anything to really like use this for per se. Like, there is of course, you're taking this one up here, the soulless form first, and this one has the kind of the same mod as the helmet the Atziri helmet has, but the Atziri helmet is a little bit higher, if I remember correctly. It's like 20 or 25% of damage, bypasses energy shield, and there's a downside here: no inherent mana regeneration, but instead regenerate mana equal to 6% of your maximum life. So if you're CI, this would be kind of trash. But if you're not CI, or like if you cannot go CI with this, right? Because if any damage penetrates the energy shield, then you die because you only have one life. So this would not be possible with CI. And I don't know if I would want to go this direction. I don't. That might be some idea with it in the future I come up with, but I don't see any potential at this very moment. This is one of those. Both of these are kind of like skippable for me. I probably will not be using those. Next up, we have Price of Power. I'm not fully sure on this. Again, it's a charge-based idea, and the way charges are, the way we use charges in Path of Exile 2 is not quite the same as Path of Exile 1, where charges are exceptionally powerful. Power charges, endurance charges, or frenzy charges are all super powerful, but I don't think that they are nearly as good in PoE 2 as they are in PoE 1. And again, it's something that I'll have to play around with to see if I can figure out a good use for, but as of right now, I can't really think of something where this like just jumps out and says, oh, I'm perfect for this specific thing, right? It comes down to playing around with it, honestly, to figure out how good it is. If we go over a couple of the smaller notes, we have some increased energy shield here. This one is 30% increased energy shield if you've consumed a power charge recently. I don't know. Maybe not, depending on how easy it is to generate them and whatnot. This could be really good, but if not, then I don't see a use for it. If it's gonna be super hard to produce a power charge or multiple for that reason, I don't know how good this would be. A couple of others. We have some life here. We have some mana, and we have some increased effect of your curses. That one is kind of nice. Like, increased effect of curses is just always nice, and you can get that on jewels. So you could technically put a jewel in here that has that, alongside with like energy shield and other stuff. So that just makes this even better. There's just a lot with this specific one that I like, and only a couple of things that I don't necessarily am super impressed with, but the rest of them seems super good. Very, very, very potent ascendancy. I might actually start out playing this. I'm not entirely sure yet, but this I could see myself starting this one, honestly, because of how cool it, like, the idea is, and how much there's actually happening here, and how different it is from a lot of the other things. So yeah. All right, so over to the new class, the Huntress. And first up, we have the Amazon Ascendancy. And if we start at the top, we have the Elemental Infusion, which grants Infused Weapon. And when you consume a power charge, trigger Infused Weapon, gain 2 Cold Infusion. I'm not entirely sure about all this. Again, charge-based things I'm not super happy with at this moment. The only real charge-based things I'm personally using at this very moment is Charge Staff for my monk. There's not really any other charge-based things I personally use, just because I don't find them nearly as effective as I was hoping they would be. So this is again one thing that we will just have to play around with it and figure out how well it performs, like if it's good or not. Next up, we have Infused Avatar, and again, this is basically it could be really good. I don't know if it stacks. So it says 50% chance for infusion to not consume infusions to not be consumed when infusing a projectile. I don't know, again, I don't know exactly what that means right now. So this could be really, really good. It could be kind of meh. Hard to tell right now. I'm not super impressed with these like two notes right here. But then when we move down to in for the kill, this one, however, I like this one. This one seems crazy. Increased movement speed, super nice, because we don't have a lot of movement speed in the game currently. So this just seems like it would be really, really, really fucking good. It sounds good. And in combine this with the Roa that allows you to not get any penalties from movement or to your movement while using an attack. This could be really, really good. Again, we'll have to kind of play around with it and see how good it actually is. But just off the top of my head, it seems really useful. On top of that, you're getting 40% increased skill speed, while an enemy with open weakness is in your presence, right? Like, this just seems fucking great. Like, increased skill speed is so nice. That is so nice. It's the opposite of the warrior, right? Like, reduced speed on everything. This just seems so good. And we already kind of know how much power is in having a lot of speed for a lot of the builds already, right? Like, more speed just means that you can apply so much more damage to whatever you are attacking. Now, next up we have Penetrate. This is fairly simple. It's a power node, right? This is just a power node. It's fairly simple. Attacks used using your weapons have added physical damage equal to 25% of your accuracy. So this, in combination with a couple of other nodes on here, potentially could be really fucking potent. And on top of that, if we start accuracy stacking, right, we could grab the node of the tree, if I remember correctly. There's a couple of notes that's worth naming here. So we have this one right here at accuracy rating equal, attacks gain increased accuracy rating equal to their critical hit chance. That could be really nice in combination with that. Alongside with this one would be super nice, I think. Increased attack speed per 250 accuracy. So if you're just super stacking accuracy, that could be really, 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 really good. Especially with this one down here, in my opinion. All right, next up we have the Hereditary Instinct. This also seems really good. I saw the idea in the reveal. They kind of showed this off. That just seemed really good, and 50% increased damage against enemies with open weakness is like 50% extra damage is 50% extra damage, right? Like, that's just how it is. And this Penetrate, Predatory Instinct, and then adding on the critical strike that we have here up next, chance to hit with attacks can exceed 100%. So we can read the other line here. It says gain additional critical strike chance equal to 25% of excess chance to hit with attacks. So if I'm understanding this right, if you have accuracy enough to where you can go above 100% hit chance, then you're gaining 25% of whatever is over the 100% as critical strike chance. Now, if you start accuracy stacking crazy here, and you have this one as well as this one, that just seems really, really, really potent. Of course, it's a guessing game right now because we haven't really played around with it, but it seems really fucking good. This just seems so good to me, especially when we compare it to some of the other classes. This just seems so fucking good. Like, thinking of the Witch Hunter, for instance, which is probably my bottom pick in terms of classes. It would go my the three or the two classes I find the worst as the worst classes right now would be the Witch Hunter and the Acolyte of Chaluda. Both of those just to me did not feel really good. I didn't really like it too much. The only real nice thing you could say about the Witch Hunter is it sometimes you get a big boom on your first attack and you get to take a lot of life off of the unique enemies and stuff. That is somewhat nice, but besides that, it's just don't like that class at all. Next up, we have the Stalking Panther. This also have a lot of potential in my opinion. This could be really, 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 really good. It also frees up your body armor to become a full ES armor instead. That's how I view it. So you're not getting the penalty from having the evasion rating of your body armor. If you have a full ES body armor with ES evasion rating, boots, gloves, and helmet, this could be kind of nice. Even if you have full-on evasion rating gear, except for your body armor as a ES base, this could be really good. I think this could be really, really, really good. But again, it comes down to playing around with it and figuring out how it exactly, how much potential it has. Next up, we have Asmeri Brew. This also seems really good, actually, in my opinion. So your life flask also recover mana, and your mana flask also recover life. This just seems really, really good. I don't know how exactly it's going to work. If it's going to be like, okay, your bottle says that you regenerate 1,000 life. Is it going to be 500 life and 500 mana, or is it going to be 1,000 life and 1,000 mana? Because if it's 1,000 life and 1,000 mana, that seems really fucking good. That just seems really good to me. And it has a lot of potential to become potent with some setups. But again, we'll have to kind of play around with this one and figure out how well it actually performs. Mystic Harvest. This one, I could see this one being somewhat broken, especially if we can use it as a caster. So if you make her a caster and use elemental damage, and that in turn let you leech life, and you have 20% of your leech being instant, after having played the Blood Mage, where I do exactly have that set up where 20% of the leech is instant, just means that I'm just constantly full life, man. It's like super hard to die with that. It's really, really potent on the Blood Mage, and it's why I view the Blood Mage as one of the absolute top of the top S tier classes, right? It's kind of on par with the Monk class, the Invoker, or the Gemlin Legionnaire. All those three, in my opinion, just are insanely good. Like, those three classes are super good. Even there's a couple other classes that I really, really, really like. The Ranger class, the what is it called? The Concoction class. I love the Concoction build I have. That shit is fucking phenomenal. It's so good. And I could see this having a lot of potential for being a caster base or something like that. If we quickly go over the small notes, we have some evasion rating, we have some skill speed, increased skill speed, which is always really, really nice. Accuracy here, we have some more evasion over here, and increased amount of life leech, right? So there is room for making a really good life leech build here, a life based build, I think. With some of these things, after having played with the Blood Mage a lot, it's one of my most played characters right now. I just see this as being really, really good. It has potential, a lot of it too. So yeah. All right. So last but not least, we have the Ritualist. To be completely fair with you, I see a couple of things on this that just seems a little bit potentially broken, honestly. This seems like it could be really overpowered. Um, of course, it's guess again. It's just me guessing, but it just seems so good. So if we start over here with the mind one, um, can instead consume 25% of mana to trigger a charm with insufficient charges. This one to me seems kind of meh. Don't really want to say too much about this. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. I don't really see a point to it too much. It's not like you're building a charm build, right? Like it's just a as of this moment, charms is more of a. It's not something that's super necessary in my opinion. I only rock one charge in every single build I have, pretty much, and it's all the same. As it cannot be frozen, pretty much, except for my blood mages cannot be ignited. But other than that, it's just all of them cannot be frozen. I haven't used any of the other charms at all, and I don't have a belt that has 3 slots open at all. I've not seen one of those ever, and I played over 1,000 hours now, so it's not something that's common by any means. However, with this one does come an extra charm slot here. This is again fucking simple as hell. Like this is so simple. +1 charm slot and 20% increased charm charge this game. Super simple, really simple. Not a lot to say about these two. Again, it's not something I'm finding super interesting, honestly. Maybe the first one could like this one could be kind of nice to have if you have nothing else to spend your point on, but other than that I don't really see a point to it. Next up we have the Mythic Attunement. Now this one, on the other hand, now this seems like the one you're going for every single time you're making this specific character. Just 25% increased bonuses gained from equipped rings and amulet. But here's the thing, right? It says rings with an S, so plural, and it says amulets with an S, so plural. I'm not entirely sure if that's a spelling mistake or if it's meant to be like that. It comes down to what the actual when we look at the next one down here, because this one is like the ingenuity build but less percentage, right? Like the ingenuity build goes up to 80% and you can corrupt it to 95, but 25% is quite a bit, honestly. That's quite a bit, especially if you have some really potent breach rings. This could be so good. And the question now becomes, so the unfueled finger, right? It adds a ring slot. That's what it says here. But does it count as a ring slot? Or, since it says amulets, does it count as an amulet slot? Because if it counts as a ring, then technically Ingenuity would buff this one, right? Now, if that is so, they either have to nerf Ingenuity. Like, there's just no way around that, right? Like, you can't have 95% increased bonuses from your rings plus another 25%. That's 125%, 120% increased bonuses from your rings, and then 25% from the amulet. That seems broken AF already. Like, this seems like it could be insane, honestly. This seems completely outrageous, to be honest. And on top of that, you're gaining the 3% attributes as you're going here, right? Like this whole line is just crazy right here. You do get basically a minus or like a negative here, but if you have 120% increased on your rings and you're holding 3 breach rings and you have all resistance on the breach rings, right? Bro, this one is fucking no-brainer. It's out the window, no-brainer. It's so easy to fucking regain that minus 15% all resistance. It doesn't. Who the fuck cares about minus 15 to all res if you can have 120% increased bonuses from 3 rings, and you can have like 16 all res on all 3 rings, and boom, you're fucking 75 all res all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Like, that's just insane. it's insane. I don't know if this is gonna survive the next nerf because it seems so fucking crazy. The reduced spirit, I probably would never take that, and the reduced mana, yeah, again, kind of like, yeah, I don't know if that's actually gonna be something you really feel, depending on how mana heavy the attacks are, of course. But if they're not super mana heavy, fuck man, who cares about minus 30% maximum mana, right? Especially if you can gain 200, like 150 mana per breach ring, and then you add, like, you get 120% extra on top of that. Jeez Louise, bro. That's like 700 something mana off 3 rings, basically. That's insane. That's completely outrageous. Then if you're getting that much mana, then nobody would care about minus 30%, right? Like, who cares about that? Next up, we have the Wildwood Persistence. This one, I don't know what to feel about this one. So this is basically like you 5% increased life recovery rate per 5% life missing. Is this gonna be really really good, or is this gonna be mid, or is it just gonna be like not useful because you kind of have to be almost dead for it to go crazy, right? I don't know, man. It's one of those things that, again, it's so hard to determine if this is actually worth using or not. It comes down to playing around with it and figuring out how potent the actual, like, the life recovery actually is. If it's something that's gonna go fucking outrageous if you're stacking it, or if it's something that's just not really that, you don't really feel it that much. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't really feel it that much, who cares, right? Like, I would never take that. I will definitely take those. Those 3 right here is like basically a guarantee every time I would go for this, ascension, right? Because this, like, that's 1 and that's 2. That's you coming out of cruel, and you already have the 3 ring slots, and you have the 25% inherent or increased bonuses, and that's coming out of cruel. It just, you have, like, that is insane. Honestly, that seems insane. Next up, we have the ritual sacrifice. Now, this one was basically the mini headhunter. So you sacrifice a monster, a rare monster, to gain one of its modifiers, kind of like you do from headhunter. But again, this is kind of like the Smith of Catava with the whole what was it called again? The Forge. I've forgotten what it was called. It was called something with the Forge, but where you pull up the anvil. Sorry, it's called the anvil. That node is kind of similar to this one, where if you're running your map, you have to stop up and you have to do this action to gain a buff for like 20 seconds or 30 seconds or whatever the fuck it is. You have to go to, like, and then if you want to continuously do this, you have to stop, do this every fucking 20 or 30 seconds. I don't really see that being something that you want to do, because it just slows you down crazy, right? And what you want to do when you're doing maps, in my opinion, one of the best things you can do is being super fast. The faster you are to complete a map, the more loot you get. If you play for 1 hour and you can do 10 maps with this shit on, and then you take it off and then you can do 30 maps, well, you're getting 3 times the fucking loot, basically, right? So I don't really know about this whole situation. Going for this one, you can kind of go for the next one as well, and the next one is basically just doing it to your own, like, yourself, right? Costing 20% of your maximum life, and then it'll grant you a random monster modifier. It does not say there is a timer here, But I bet you it's not going to be something that lasts throughout the whole map. But if it does last throughout the whole map, then it has a lot of potential. And then I would definitely consider using this. But if it does not last for the entire map, I don't see a point in even doing this. Like, I would probably go for some other stuff then. But as I said, if it's not a time-based thing or like a charge-based thing or something like, oh, you can use it 3 times, whatever the fuck, right? And then it's gone. But if it's persistent throughout the rest of the map, or from you use it till you leave the area, wow, then it's really potent. But if not, then not for me then. And last but not least, if we go over here, we have the Corrupted Life Force, which was Blood Boil, and that was basically when you kill an enemy, they when they die, they leave behind a pool of blood that then, or boiling blood that then spreads corrupted blood to any nearby enemies. After having played the warrior class, the warbringer, with the corrupted blood warcry, I do know how potent corrupted blood can be. So with that build, I can apply up to 10 corrupted bloods to one enemy, and it does kill them off really fast. Like, it does take their health down really fast. On top of that, I don't believe that there is any resistance to corrupted blood on enemies within the game. So if they have zero resistance to corrupted blood, this could be super good, honestly. This could be really freaking good. And I see a potential of using that exact same setup that I did with my warrior, but now just adding this to it, right? And using the helmet that allows you to do infinite warcry, so you don't have to rely on the warrior warbringer class where you get the infinite warcries, where the warcries have no cooldown. There is I think it's a helmet, a unique helmet that does the exact same thing. So technically that could be really potent. I could see a world where we have the Mystic Attunement, the Fueled Finger, and then we go for the Corrupted Life Force. And then that in turn makes it just insane, right? Like, with the corrupted blood on the warcry and being able to spread it even more, that could be kind of insane. But it's, again, it comes down to how well it performs, if it's actually used worth using, if it actually does enough damage to where it feels good. I don't know. It's hard to tell right now. I do, however, really like the idea. It just comes down to how good it actually performs once you're in game playing around with it. This is also kind of a question about the new support skills we're getting. This is kind of the same with the ritual, right? Because if you can add longer time to it, so you can have it for a minute or 2 minutes, then it would be very nice. But if you cannot add time to it and you're forced to like do it every 20 seconds, then I don't see a point to it. This one, however, if you can add some insane support gems to this one, it could be really good. I could see this being really, really fucking good. Now, I'm probably not, as I said, not gonna play the Huntress as my first character. I'm thinking I'll play Witch as my first character, and then once we get to end game, then I'll swap into playing something different, like a Huntress or whatever, right? But as of the first character I'm making, I don't think I'm gonna go for the Huntress. I'm leaning mostly towards Monk or Witch. And talking with my buddy or my teammate, Ricky, he is leaning towards Sorceress and Ranger. So, I think I'm sticking with the Witch choice for now, as of right now at least. That's my plan. I'm not entirely 100% convinced I'll stick to it when we go launch, but I will definitely let you guys know what I think. And if we go over the smaller notes here, we have some more physical damage. We have some more movement speed, which is super, super nice. Movement speed is always nice when there's when the current movement speed in the game is a bit slow. Increased charges gained, yeah, it's whatever it is. Like, I'm not super keen on this one. Increased life recovery rate, 10%. You can get it off a red jewel easily. It's not something I'm super happy with. This one, however, increased attributes is just sick. Like, attribute stacking is crazy. Even though they did say that shit is gone, it still leaves potential for some attribute stacking here. And of course, the negative ones here, the reduced ones, it is what it is. It's what you have to. These could be so good, they have to give you something bad on it too, right? Because it's kind of like the Blood Mage. Blood Mage, the first one you get is life remnants, and it basically makes you pay life and mana for every skill you use. That is a massive nerf to your build when you're doing your first ascension, right? Like, that's just a minus. So personally, I would do my first ascension. I would grab the first little note that was like 3% increased life, and then I did not grab the life remnants. I ran through the entire game, got to end game, and then I went and did all 4 ascensions all at once. And then once I had all 4 ascensions, then I grabbed the life remnants, and I grabbed the spell, crit spell, whatever it was, and the life leech from spells. And then it felt really good, right? Like, then it did not feel like a punishment. But the Blood Mage is so goddamn strong that they had to do something to make it not feel insanely broken, even though it is insanely broken. So yeah, I do understand where they're coming from, putting some negative effects in here because of how strong these 3 seems, especially, as I said, if they aren't nerfing ingenuity and you are able to use your 3rd ring as if an extra buff with ingenuity. This is gonna be stupid strong. I'm hoping I'm actually hoping it's gonna be like that we can use ingenuity and they don't nerf it and it does count for the ring and we get this too. Bro, I am playing this for sure then. I 100% am playing this. Not as my first character, but I'm gonna be making this as my second character for sure. But we'll have to wait and see. I'm not entirely sure on which direction they're going. Hopefully, we'll get the patch notes super soon, so we can really start going over and figuring out what exactly is going on. But yeah, I appreciate everybody for watching. Hope you had a great day, great evening, whatever it is for you, and I will catch you all in the next one.